You've talked a little bit about Humane Borders, but the other organization where we were was Border Links. Would one of you want to say something about what Border Links kind of did? What was their main purpose? What did we do mostly with them?
Well, we stayed with Border Links. They let us stay there, and basically what they did is they connected us with the other organizations, and they got a lot of speakers to come with us. There was a teacher from a school that taught Native studies, that was kind of their focus, and a student that went to that school, even though that school closed down, or was scheduled to close down when we were there. The Border Links also connected us with Reverend John Fife, who talked to us about the sanctuary program, and that started back when people were coming over from Guatemala to seek asylum, but the state wasn't giving people, our U.S. wasn't giving them asylum, but people were so people would keep them in the churches for protection.
Border Links also had a sustainable food program that they were strong advocates for. So there was a speaker that came in about all and the big NAFTA agreement is one reason why a lot of immigrants had to come over, because their main agricultural resource is corn, and a lot of the farmers lost their jobs through the NAFTA agreement.
NAFTA is pretty much an agreement that lets a few countries, including the U.S. and Mexico, trade without tariffs. And it turns out that in the U.S. we very heavily subsidize corn, which means that thanks to the government giving the farmers a large amount of money, our farmers sell corn for significantly less than they could otherwise, even less than it costs to produce it. And that put a lot of Mexican corn farmers out of business.
One of the controversial things about that is that we said that we'd give them an allotted amount of time so that they could find another crop that they could grow successfully. But we kind of went back on our word and gave them, just a slim fraction of that amount of time that we had originally promised them.
But there's a canal system instead of a wall between the United States and Mexico in some areas, and it's intended to drown anyone that tries to swim across. So there's a forced current and a concrete, highly sloped edge, and it's a very effective deterrent. But on the other hand, children fall into it sometimes, and some organization asked that a couple of little safety mechanisms be put in place so that it wouldn't allow people to cross the canal, but it would keep them from drowning, and they decided not to do that. Our government decided not to do that. But at the same time, we were spending, I can't even remember how many millions of dollars to move fish who were endangered from one stream to another because the canal would have killed the fish. And so they had all these booms that were moving these large fish to a safer place. And at the same time, they thought, well, maybe they could come up with something for the canal, and what they came up with was a body retrieval machine. Nothing to save people, but they could pull out the bodies after they drowned more easily.
No, mostly for economic reasons, because looking for jobs in America, they were talking about NAFTA wiping out their jobs in Mexico, like the farmers and stuff. And sometimes to meet with other family members here that have already crossed.
You hear a lot that drugs are involved in a lot of the border crossings, and although that may be the case, all the people that went through this streamline process, the 70 or 80 people a day, one of the conditions of them being allowed to do this streamline process was that there was, no previous arrests and there was no other no complications like drugs involved. They weren't found with any drugs or anything like that. These were solely people who came over here, you assume, to work, but had no other convictions, no other problems with them.
Part of the reason that there are drugs involved is because we're trying to make it so hard to cross. It's getting more and more expensive to pay somebody called a coyote to guide you across, and to pay for it, there are a lot of people who are agreeing to take parcels of drugs along with them when they cross the border.
I have a question, high school students, what's the perspective? Does this subject matter ever come up in school, and what are like some of your peers, what do they think about it?
A lot of the kids aren't as aware of it, but I know in my theater class, we've talked some about issues like that.
Kevin and my son goes to school in a small town, kind of outside the Twin Cities, and there's a lot of Mexicans that have moved into that area to try to find work. And I will say that I really feel the tensions when I'm in the town. A sizable percentage now of the deaf school is Mexican, which again is very unique from even 10 years ago. And so they have a real cultural opportunity in school. What do you see in school in terms of cultural acceptance of, do you see that there's any, say, prejudice? That's a good way to say it. Do you see that in school or in even kind of social situations, maybe not in school, but in sports or, social situations?
My school's not really like that. I see sometimes that I'll go to a few classes at the high school. But as far as any feeling against or for them, Mexican students tend to skip class. It doesn't seem quite as the connection to classes for them. But I think it's sort of a different world that we live in compared to in general. We have deaf culture at our school, so we have that cultural issue. So cultural issues are not a new thing for us. We've seen that before compared to the public schools.
Could I ask Kevin, do they do anything to help the students share of their culture and their experience? For example, ask some of the Mexican students what their life is like, or somehow make use of that opportunity.
It's hard to say. I think it's all sort of individual. Some people have friends, but I think for the most part, they're very separate, the cultural groups. I don't think they tend to accept each other that much. They're not used to being for each other's presence, being around each other, so they tend to separate into their own groups. Most the parents grow up in that town tend to stay in that town, sort of a generational thing. So I think sometimes the views can be different from what the parents did. So I don't know, I think it's a little bit different environment, the school compared to the town in general. I've seen both, but it seems to be sort of that separation. Not that people hate each other or anything like that, they just have different worlds.